Are you a continuationist or a cessationist?
If you were to press me, I'd probably be a loose continuationist. I understand the appeal to the cessationist aspect. But my thinking is that when you go to different countries and stuff, God still meets people where they are. And so sometimes, like in the West here, when we have the Bible and stuff like this, it might not be as necessary for these overt miracles and stuff to be occurring. But you see it a lot when you go to, like, even in Muslim countries, they have dreams of Jesus a lot. And you don't see Christians having dreams of Muhammad or anything like that, right? But I think that that's God's way of, I mean, because I've talked to a lot of Muslims who have dreams of Jesus, and then that's what led them to Christianity. You know what I mean? So I definitely think it's definitely possible. So if I was going to lean, I'd probably lean a little bit more to continuationist. But I understand the appeal not to let anything and everything in.
So cessationist is a spectrum.
Yeah.
Continuationist is a spectrum, right? So you'd probably be more on the conservative end of the continuationist. I would probably be more on the charismatic end of continuationist, meaning like I believe in words of knowledge. Like I believe God can deposit a very specific word of knowledge for me that he wants me to share with someone. Sometimes it's from a scripture. Other times it's just like God gave me a picture or a vision or something specific. Sometimes he wants me to share it. Sometimes he doesn't want me to share it.
Okay.
Sometimes, sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's a very specific word of encouragement.
Okay.
Right. So I would be a little further. Do you believe God can move in that specific way? Because I'm talking about kind of almost like a prophetic. And by the way, I don't like the title of prophets and apostles. I think it's just confusing. But I do believe God can and does speak prophetically to people.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the prophetic aspect, but again, I mean, I'm open to it. I think God can do anything.
Do you ever feel like God has given you like something so specific where you're like, maybe about your family, maybe about a friend, maybe about, right? And you're like, there's no way you would have known this thing had God not revealed it to you.
Well, I used to think that a lot more.
Okay.
But I've gotten a lot more cautious because I've seen it ruin other people's lives too.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah,
and then I think about also with the way that culture is, people think that the universe talks to them and stuff like this. We didn't see this as much historically, where people kind of waiting for an answer and then they felt like God is going to deposit it into them. We don't really see that. I don't feel like you don't see it scattered. I mean, you don't see it in the Bible being for like all believers or something like that. So you'd have to say it's post-Acts. You know what I mean? And
now you're talking like a cessationist.
What's that?
Now you're talking like
I know, I am.
You just flip-flopped. This man had the reversible jersey,
See, you talked me out of it.
He started it, and then, well, to be fair, he does say in Acts in the last days, I think this is, what is it?
Men will have dreams. Are you talking about that verse?
Yeah, and there's the daughters that prophesy. That's right.
Yeah.
Your kids will, in the last days, they will have visions and they will prophesy.
100. And this is why I haven't done a dedicated enough study to it to know, because I have seen the verses that seem to kind of appeal to both. But I think that my fear is that because I've studied a lot of culture, and I see how culture has changed, and then how this belief seems to have come with culture. So it could be a product of culture. Not saying like the prophetic utterances or whatever they call scripturally, but something like that. Like it's not a feeling. That I'll say. Like I don't think that God is just a feeling.
I would say, because I don't feel it is not a feeling when something like that comes. It's not like. And by the way, this is gonna sound bad coming out. I despise the God told me card. So if I get something, I would never be like, hey John, God told me. I despise that, because I just think that's where you can really do damage. Yeah, that's right. Versus like, hey man, like I was praying, and maybe. I don't know if this makes sense. Maybe it doesn't, but like this is kind of what I got. That's right. Yeah. And I think taking a more humble approach, I think, is a way to protect people. Which, by the way, this isn't like a gift that I'm like flex or like I'm like pulling up on people.
I can't wait
to
see a video.
But there are times where God will give me very specific things for people. And again, sometimes it's just I'm not even supposed to say nothing. I just know like, oh, this is about to happen.
Weren't we talking with Adam Coleman on when we were all on the live stream?
Yeah.
I think this came up there. I hope not. If not, Adam, forgive me for saying this if it came up in a different conversation. But he said he heard from God. He believed he heard from God to go talk to this guy. And he said his name is something, and it was or something. But then he said he did it again. And then he went up. He's like, hey, Chad. And the guy's like, no, I'm not Chad.
Yeah, I've never had nothing like that. Like I've never had like a name given. That's kind of funky.
Yeah, but that'd be a way to test it. You know, it'd be like, okay, if you really believe it's God, But I mean, it is tough. But I'm not against it because I just don't know. But I'm also not for it because I don't know.
Well, the beautiful part is that you are actually living out the end of 1 Corinthians 14, which is saying, don't quench don't quench the spirit.
That's right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which I think is like, man, if you're open to it, I think that's the dope part. 100%, and I think I get in trouble because I will still call out some of the foolishness in the charismaniac crowd.
Yeah.
You know, because I just think some of that stuff is a lot of times does more harm than good.
Yeah.
You know, but I think God does speak and move and reveal himself. But to your point, it's not a feeling, and it's not don't walk around here saying God told me this and God.
Right.
It's just
and
just
you know what? On that note,
yeah.
on something that's kind of similar is I've really grown in my faith because I used to kind of despise like some of these, like say street preachers or billboard signs because I didn't grow up in the church. So I'm like, this is weird. You know what I mean? It's super offensive and stuff. But I was humbled. The longer that I've been a Christian, I keep getting more humbled by God, right? Because I realized that God talks to different people in different ways, kind of like I mentioned earlier. And I have a friend who converted based off of a tract. You know what I mean? Even my assistant, I believe she converted. I think it was off of a billboard. Yep. You know what I mean? And so like, there's these things where I'm just like, I would never share the gospel that way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we have to be humble to realize that God is using different approaches. So like people are like, I'm anti-movie. You know, I get a lot of anti-movie people. It's like, oh, God isn't using that. Use your Bible, you know? Okay, for you, and for the people you know or whatever, that could be true. But other people, God can work through the chosen, for example, or whatever else. So we want to really approach that with humility, knowing that God can work through different means for different people.
Yep. That's it.
Look, sometimes people struggle with quiet time because you're like, I don't know what to do. Yeah, so I got this Bless God prayer journal. So look, they got a section. I got praise reports, things I'm grateful for, prayers for other people, personal prayers, memory verse, I will get this done today. Then my time in the Word showed me, and notes just for free thinking. This thing's mad helpful. Just writing down things that you're grateful for, just doing that consistently, that's another really good way to fight depression and anxiety, because it's I don't know if it's impossible, but it's really difficult to experience the feelings of depression and everything and truly be, genuinely grateful for something and dwelling on something that you're grateful for. This actually is really helpful for that as well.
We see according to the Bible that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.